What documents do you need for a marriage-based green card filing? That's what we're talking about in today's episode of Sumner School Family Immigration Basics. My name is Emily Sumner with Sumner Immigration Law. Let's get into it. So this video is going to be a high-level overview of the types of documents that you should be considering for a marriage-based immigration filing or application. This video is not intended to be legal advice. It is not legal advice, and it is not intended for individuals or couples who are intending to file on their own and to teach you how to do it yourself. That's fine if you decide to do it on your own, but you absolutely have to check all of the form instructions, check the current trends and policies to make sure that you're including everything. This is absolutely not a comprehensive list and can change over time. So generally, the types of documents that you need for marriage-based green card filing fall into two major categories. The first is proof of the relationship to show that it is a true relationship and not just for immigration purposes. The second category of documents is your individual documents to show that you are eligible, that you're qualified for this particular type of filing. So let's start with proof of the relationship, the fun one. So proof of the relationship, I always tell clients, there's no one piece of documentation that if you don't have it, the case is going to be denied. Instead, it's more about telling the story of your relationship. So the types of documentation that you're going to have available depend on how long you've been together, how long you've been married, if you're married at all. This may be a K1. How long you have lived together, if at all, if you are living in the United States versus another country, that type of thing. The documents that you can consider including include things like photos of the two of you together, especially photos with family and friends. If you have a joint lease or mortgage, you can include that. You don't have to have one. If you have joint accounts, like joint bank accounts, whether it's a checking account, savings account, or credit cards, you can include that. If you have filed tax returns together, you may want to include that documentation. You could include documentation of trips that you've taken together, either domestically or internationally, or proof that you've gone to visit each other in your respective countries or homes. You could include proof of communication between the two of you together, so screenshots of text messages or phone logs to show that you communicate on a regular basis. And just to give a general idea of the types of things that you talk about, if you have done things together. So apart from travel, if you've done things together, like gone to the movies or have gone to museums or, other outings like that, if you have proof of that type of activity together, that can also be helpful. The other type of documentation is the documentation for the individual. So the US citizen who is filing the petition has to show that they're a US citizen, so a copy of their birth certificate, US birth certificate, or passport. The foreign national also has to submit certain documentation that can include things like a copy of your birth certificate, definitely a copy of your marriage certificate, for the two of you if you are filing not a K1, but if you're filing the I-130 in consular processing or one-step, the medical exam you have to submit, depending on how you're filing, you may have to submit a police certificate. You also will need proof of any prior marriages and their dissolution. So a death decree for previous spouses for either one of you, or divorce decrees. And that's for all of the marriages that you've had, not just the most recent marriage. The foreign national will have to have a medical exam done, and that's done in a very specific way by a very specific physician. There'll be a list of physicians to choose from depending on how you're doing the processing. And then financial documents from the foreign national. So that's for the affidavit of support. You have to include the tax return and then proof of the income, the source of income or the assets, depending on how you're approaching that. So that is like I said, a very high level overview of the types of documents, but I think that's a good thing to be thinking about is the types of documents that you need so you can start preparing those. Sometimes it takes the foreign national or anybody a while to get the documents depending on where those documents are. Maybe mom has them buried in the attic upstairs. It's also a good idea to make sure that your documents, your civil documents, particularly meaning any foreign birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce decrees, death decrees, things like that, meet the requirements of the reciprocity table. If you search for US Department of State reciprocity table, you can search by country and then look at the particular type of document. So sometimes a person will have a birth certificate, for example, that is a short form and not a long form, and we need the long form version. So sometimes it can take a while to get those documents. So it's good to be thinking ahead about that if you can. Overall, kind of general tips. You do not have to submit every single piece of documentation that you have available to prove the validity of your relationship, and you probably should not do that. So, not every photo. You don't have to submit every photo that you have or every text message that you have. And sometimes the text messages can be, or the communication can be between family members. I have a group chat with my in-laws and with my family as well, and our spouses, my spouse and I are included on our respective family group chats. So things like that can be helpful as well. But you don't have to submit every single piece of documentation that you have. It's really more about the quality of the documentation rather than quantity. And again, always double check the documents that are required based on your specific situation. The documents that you need change over time. So if you're filing on your own, or even if you're working with an immigration attorney, know that this is a general high-level overview, but it is not a complete checklist. And you've got to make sure that you're reading those form instructions and making sure that you're submitting everything that is required for your specific situation. There may be additional documentation that's required as well, depending on your specific situation. For example, if you are in the US in a immigration status, which hopefully you are, or perhaps you've overstayed. But my point is you may need to submit proof of your current status and or proof of how and when you entered the United States. In addition, if you have a criminal history, you will need that documentation as well, perhaps even including traffic tickets. So there may be additional documentation that you need. I hope that you have found this information helpful. If you're looking for someone to help you walk through this process step by step so you don't make critical mistakes along the way, we are here to help. You can contact us to set a time for an initial consultation to come up with a plan, learn about the options that you have and how we might be able to help. Our contact information will follow this video. In addition, I hope that if you found this video helpful, you will share it with your family or friends, and make sure that you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss our next video. My name is Emily Sumner with Sumner Immigration Law, helping clients around the United States and around the world with family-based and employment-based immigration matters. Until next time.